Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, in some cases, good morning. It's now 1 o'clock, so we're going to get started. My name is Eric Walton, and I am the Senior Associate for the International Fisheries Markets team at the Pew Charitable Trusts. A major focus of our work is advocating out regional fishery management organizations for policies that improve large-scale fisheries management, like harvest strategies, also known as management procedures. We collaborate closely with the Ocean Foundation, who, as part of that effort, host harveststrategies.org, a website for all things related to harvest strategies. The Ocean Foundation is working with the Common Oceans Program of the FAO, which is funded by the Global Environment Facility, or GEF, on the ABNJ Tuna 2 project. ABNJ stands for Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, in other words, the high seas. And the project's overarching goal is to ensure all major tuna stocks are fished sustainably by 2028. Harvest strategies are a key component of reaching that goal. Today's event is the 9th in a series of 16 quarterly webinars the Ocean Foundation is hosting over the course of this 4-year project. The focus of today's session is on the long-term protection harvest strategies provide to tuna fisheries and why markets should advocate for their timely adoption. Harvest strategies offer stability, predictability, and science-based safeguards to the tuna fisheries that supply global markets. However, these tools don't implement themselves. Market actors play a critical role. Seafood companies across the supply chain are stepping up to actively advocate for the adoption of precautionary harvest strategies to secure an abundant and sustainable tuna supply for the future. We are honored to have a distinguished group of speakers joining us today from across the spectrum of seafood market advocacy. The format will include 5 short presentations today, followed by a 15 to 20-minute panel discussion and Q&A. So before we dive in, a few housekeeping items. Please keep your microphone muted and camera off unless you are speaking. We are offering interpretations in English, Spanish, and French. You can access it by clicking the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window. Hold all questions until the Q&A session at the end. At that point, feel free to use the raise hand function to ask your question live or submit it at any time via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Ocean Foundation's YouTube channel shortly after the event. Thank you. Our first speaker is Maren Hawk, the Senior Fisheries Program Manager for the Marine Stewardship Council. She joined the MSC in 2015 and leads the MSC's tuna work in the Americas. Prior to the MSC, Maren worked at the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission as a Fishery Management Plan Coordinator. She will be speaking about how harvest strategies fit into the MSC program. All right, Maren, take it away.
Thank you, Eric, and hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I will just share my screen. And then hope this pops up. Awesome. All right, well, I will dive right in. As it said, my name is Maren Hawk, and I'm the Senior Fisheries Program Manager for the Americas, so I coordinate our tuna work. This is some brief information about the Marine Stewardship Council and the program. Our program began 25 years ago in response to the decline in clam bench cod up in Newfoundland, Canada. At that time, Unilever, the largest supplier of whitefish, was concerned about their supply chain and the prospects of the whitefish supply chain for the future. So MSC was created through a partnership with Unilever and WWF to ensure that there was market incentive for fisheries to operate sustainably. We own and operate 2 different standards shown here on this slide. The first is our fishery standard, and that focuses on the operations on the water. That is based on global best practice, which I also had here on the slide defined. The chain of custody standard is focused on the supply chain. and that standard ensures that any product that is labeled with the MSC eco label comes from a certified fishery. So together, these two standards create a market incentive for fisheries to operate sustainably because the fisheries receive the opportunity to display the MSC eco label on their product, and then consumers and market actors reward those sustainable fisheries by preferentially purchasing the products with the eco label. This then creates the incentive for more fisheries to come into the program, and that improves the health of the oceans worldwide. In the past 10 years, we have seen a very large increase in certified tuna in our program. On the graph on the left, on the x-axis is the year, and on the y-axis is the volume of tuna that is in the MSC program. As you can see, it's been more than quadruple, I think at least. And the stats on the right are how much tuna is currently certified against the MSC standard. We have 54% of global tuna hatch that is certified. 3% of that is in assessment against the MSC standard. Almost 0.5% is in the MSC improvement program, and 14% is in a fishery improvement program. So MSC and tuna is very important to the MSC. But what does demand for tuna and the MSC program have to do with management procedures, which we tend to call harvest strategies? As I mentioned earlier, the MSC fishery standard is based on global best practice. A study that was conducted by Ray Hilburn and colleagues in 2020 showed that where fisheries are intensively managed, the stocks are above target levels or they are rebuilding. However, where fisheries management is less intense, stock status and the trends are worse. Regions that have less developed fisheries management have 3 times a greater harvest rate and half the abundance as managed stock. Global best practice indicates that when fisheries are managed, their stocks are sustained at appropriate levels, and that provides long-term protection to the fish stocks and security to the supply chains that depend on those fish stocks. Within the MSC standard, it is a requirement that fisheries do not overfish or deplete their target stock. And that is why harvest strategies are so important to the MSC. Now, when we dive into tuna management, it is one of the more complex topics. Tuna is a highly migratory species with the life stages occurring thousands of miles apart, which means understanding the biology of the different stocks and species is difficult. It requires collaboration amongst scientists across international borders. In addition, tuna travel across national and international boundaries, in those various stages of life. So that requires a collaboration and agreement of various jurisdictions and countries on how to manage those stocks. And finally, in order to ensure that the management is adapted amongst all the global changes that occur, it's important to have a precautionary management in place. So overall, successful tuna management requires the input from fishery managers, scientists, supply chain companies, harvesters, and other entities that are involved in order to ensure its success. With this in mind, this is where the harvest strategies come into the picture. Harvest strategies, or management procedures, as they are often called, have been a part of the MSC program for a while. The MSC fisheries standard requires that fishes do not overfish or deplete their target stock, and a harvest strategy is needed to maintain stocks at a sustainable level. Or in some cases, a harvest strategy can help stocks to recover. Up on the side is the definition of a harvest strategy as the MSC program defines it. It is the combination of monitoring, stock assessment, harvest control rules, and management actions that is tested by management strategy evaluation and that guides the decisions of a management body. I know that's a mouthful. The progress in adopting harvest strategies is often slow, and every party that targets the stock must agree to the management measures proposed. And if that progress is not made and harvest strategies are not adopted, the failure to implement those does threaten the long-term sustainability of the stocks. Recently, the requirements for tuna were updated to ensure that our program supports international efforts to drive change in tuna management. The requirements for this component of our standard are in a part of the standard that's called Section SE, and it's basically a way to define state-of-the-art harvest strategies. So in the standard, fisheries are required to meet specific milestones for delivering state-of-the-art harvest strategies. That includes a management strategy evaluation and agreeing on effective hatch and/or effort constraints. Section SE requires that all milestones are aligned for all MSC certified fisheries on a particular stock. This is important because it provides those fisheries a unanimous voice to talk to the RFMO and ask for certain management actions. And Section SE reinforces the need to collaborate because it is an imperative that scientists, fisheries managers, and governments all work together to meet the different milestones needed to create a state-of-the-art harvest strategy. This is an example, so the Western and Central Pacific Ocean shipwreck is an example of a state-of-the-art harvest strategy in our program. Here on the slide is a timeline of how long it took, even longer than what's shown, to have the complete harvest strategy implemented and adopted. The harvest strategy for shipwreck consists of 3 different components: the tropical tuna measure, the management procedure, and the stock assessment. The tropical tuna measure describes the implementation of specific limits and measures for the shipwreck tuna stock. The management procedure describes the technical elements that specify how those measures are calculated. And then the stock assessment is used to monitor the stock status and performance of all of those different components. In 2022, 118 major companies signed a joint letter coordinated by the NGO Tuna Forum that urged the delegates of the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Management Commission to implement harvest strategies for shipwreck stocks. So again, all of those different entities participating is what contributed to a successful state-of-the-art harvest strategy. It would not have been possible without various stakeholders. And finally, I just wanted to run through where different tuna fisheries, tuna stocks are in our program. So this slide shows different tuna stocks on their journey to state-of-the-art harvest strategies. As fisheries enter the most recent version of our standard, they will be required to start to implement Section SE and begin to work on the state-of-the-art harvest strategy. So as I mentioned, shipwreck has completed that. Western and Central Pacific yellowfin and Bihai have a deadline of May 2029. South Pacific albacore has a deadline of May 2027, and this is again to implement the different milestones that are contained in our program. And Atlantic yellowfin just began the process, and so the deadline is yet to be determined. And with that, I will hand it back to Eric. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maren. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that excellent overview of the MSC's efforts to improve global fisheries management. That was really insightful. Next up, we're going to hear from Krista Svensson, the Global Sustainable Fishing and Healthy Oceans Manager for the Trimarine Group. She has been working with commercial fishing and seafood processing for 25 years and is currently a board member of the Seafood Task Force. She will be speaking on her and Trimarine's experience working with management procedures. Krista, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. I will start showing my screen and I will probably turn my camera off because I am absolutely terrible at multitasking. And I think we're pretty close to here we go. So with that, firstly, can everybody see my screen in
It looks great.
full presentation mode, or I mean, am I in slideshow or am I not in slideshow?
Not in slideshow yet. Just click that. Should be perfect. Perfect.
All right. So with that, I'll just preface this briefly with, we thought it would be helpful for people to understand a bit more about Bolton Food and Trimarine and how we engage in this space through our MSc Fisheries in particular. But we also are asked frequently about advocacy and how to get more involved. And so we did want to give a couple of very solid case examples of the work that we are doing on management procedures. So with that, I will get started. I'll just start by saying that Bolton for over 75 years has been a part of people's daily lives. We bring food and taste to their tables, care into their homes, and add a lot of quality to people's daily routines. We currently have over 11,000 employees. We are in over 50 offices. We have 16 processing plants around the globe, and we own and operate 13 fishing vessels. We certainly work with passion and purpose for over 60 trusted brands, and we distribute into about 150 countries. So in terms of our branding, we have food and tuna supply. We also have home and personal care, beauty, and adhesives. And so through all of these, we support families, communities, and have made a number of commitments to supporting the planet that we all share. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of the brands many of you may be familiar with. There's Rio Mare, Soapy K, Wild Planet, if you're familiar in the United States with that one. And then, of course, Trimarine, which I work for and am representing in today's presentation. So in terms of the connection, I do want to highlight how Trimarine and Bolton Food have connected. Bolton Group has been a strategic partner with Trimarine for over 25 years. Trimarine was acquired in 2019 by Bolton, and then beginning in 2024, the group combined both the food category and Trimarine into one business unit and unique category. And this really has allowed us to meld a wealth of experience in both the consumer packaged goods side of the equation and then the direct on the water sourcing. And that includes our activities with the Marine Stewardship Council in terms of certification. And just in terms of what we're talking about, the integration between the two of us, Bolton Food is the second largest supplier for canned tuna, particularly under the Rio Mare brand, but also others, and accounts for about 12%. And Trimarine handles on a general basis, any given year, about 10% of the global tuna supply. So we are certainly concerned about making sure that we have management strategies in place that will allow all of us to continue sourcing, eating, and enjoying healthy tunas. I'll also say we've taken a number of commitments regarding the sourcing of all fish, both for our branded and for our trade, and that these type of commitments help drive commercial demand for MSC products. And it also helps us build greater collective advocacy for RFMOs where these fish are assessed. And many of our fisheries that we source from are not under our own certifications, but I do want to highlight the 4 that we do have. We've been working in the space for almost a decade. We began our first certification in terms of being certified. That happened in 2016. That was for the Trimarine Western and Central Pacific skipjack, yellowfin, and big eye fishery. A month later, the Solomon Islands came online, and that is specific to the fishing vessels that we own and operate. We have seen success in the program, and in 2022, the Atlantic longline fishery that we work with a number of our suppliers on became certified, and that followed with our largest fishery, the Pacific Ocean longline fisheries, in September of last year. So we have been actively working and engaged, not just with our own fleets, but also with a number of our suppliers. And now to get to advocacy, I'd like to say that this is a collective effort. You can see a number of the organizations that we work with. We've got a couple of our very strategic partners up there. We're a founding member of ISSF. Obviously, we're connected to MSC. WWF and Oxfam are also strategic partners. But we do work with a large number of NGOs. We also work with a large number of competitors within the bounds of pre and pro competitive organizations. So it is one thing to advocate for your viewpoint, but it is a lot stronger together. I will also note that the majority of the work that we do in this space is in the Pacific. Currently, about 94% of the tuna that we source comes out of the Western and Central Pacific, along with the Eastern Pacific. But that does not mean that we're not involved in the Atlantic under ICAT or in IOTC. We do also maintain activities in those areas. But when you're out and about and seeing Trimarine at events or Bolton at events, typically we do lean a little more heavily on the Pacific, where we have active engagement. And so in terms of how advocacy works with related MSC topics and harvest control rules, I thought it would be helpful to give a couple of examples. The first one I'd like to talk about is South Pacific albacore, WCPO big eye, and yellowfin. And last December, we realized that South Pacific albacore wasn't going to meet the timelines for harvest control rules specifically, and that all MSC stakeholders were at risk. And that unfortunately, despite management options presented by SPC, for stocks during the regular session that was held in Suva last year, consensus wasn't going to be reached. And so we also noted that, hey, failure to progress towards state-of-the-art harvest strategies was going to lead to suspension of all fisheries. And there are over 40 MSC certified fisheries in that region. It also accounts for about 85% of all MSC certified tuna. And this meant that we thought advocacy was in order, started talking to people, and ultimately Trimarine, along with FCF Bumblebee and a number of other industry stakeholders who were attending the meeting, worked pretty tirelessly in the margins along with commissioners to put forward a path that would allow fisheries to remain on target. And I will also note that previously we had done work through this channel with regard to skipjack, which received an unconditional pass at MSC, and that we are hopeful that this type of achievement for comprehensive harvest strategies will go into effect in the future so that other stocks can follow. In terms of where this is headed for all of us, obviously we will continue our advocacy, but there are online workshops this year to discuss implementation of a management procedure. We now have a joint working group between WCPFC and ICAT, since we share a stock, and we think that that will allow for more cohesive and harmonized management, which is encouraging. And I'll say that we've got a lot of work to do in 2025 to continue to meet our MSC objectives, but we do think that certificate holder advocacy has helped in moving the needle for sustainable fisheries with regard to MSC certification. And then the next example I'd like to give is a bit of a pivot. This is to the South Atlantic. We have been working on advocacy regarding management strategy evaluations, both last year in 2024 and this year at the ICAP meetings. I think it's important to note that while we have a consistently healthy stock in the South Atlantic, we don't have harvest control rules for this stock, and that they have not been on the MSC roadmap. So, just because things are going well now does not mean we shouldn't be talking about how to make sure that things keep going well. And I'll also say that without any advocacy work and support from MSC certified fisheries in the South Atlantic, all of our certificates would be suspended by 2026 if no work was done. So the current situation, Trimarine and 4 other MSC certificate holders have been working together through the MSC Ocean Stewardship Fund. We applied for funding, and I will also say that we ourselves as participating companies have also been financially contributing to harvest control rule development work. We have done further advocacy, particularly with the South African delegation, so that they have what they need to provide information to ICAT through panel 3.
Krista?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sorry, no, I can hear you perfectly fine. I just want to let you know that if you mind wrapping it up quickly, just so
Not
we
a
can
problem.
stay along to our next speaker. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Not a problem. I've got 1 slide left, so we will go from there. And I'll just say that the results are that we now have an ICAT recommendation for 24-09 for the development of initial management objectives for South Atlantic albacore. So I'll give you my key takeaways here, and of course you'll get the slides. We think we have a holistic, transformative, and global approach. Bolton, we say partnership is our leadership, and we could not do this without the support of technical advisors like those at SPC, other members from industry, and our NGO partners. We think that it takes years in terms of partners and partnerships, and that doesn't mean that you can't start something now, but these are long-term problems and long-term solutions. And that we also think that advocacy works best when there's effort to support change with long-term resources. So with that, I will wrap it up, and thanks for the opportunity to present.
Thank you so much, Krista. That was incredible. Thank you for your thoughtful insights into Trimarine's extensive work in the space and leadership and RFMO engagement. So now we're going to be moving to the more consumer-facing end of the supply chain. Sam Grimley is the Executive Director of CPACT, a group of leading North American seafood companies. Prior to joining CPACT, he spent 9 years with the Sustainable Fisheries Partnership, working closely with North American seafood buyers to develop and implement sustainable sourcing efforts. He will be speaking on CPACT's experience with RFMOs and highlighting the role industry can play in meeting market demands for well-managed tuna. So Sam, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Appreciate it, the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for showing up for the presentations today. As Eric said, my name is Sam Grimley. I'm the Executive Director of CPACT. In full transparency, I'm probably the least knowledgeable presenter when it comes to talking about the technical components of harvest control rules and RFMOs and conservation management measures and all the things that my fellow panelists are discussing today. What I can talk about is how seafood companies, particularly the ones that participate in CPACT, are motivated to support responsible fisheries management, why they're doing these things, and how they're going about it. So with that, we'll jump right into things. So CPACT, if you're not familiar, we are a US-based nonprofit organization that consists of seafood industry members. Our mission is to drive stewardship and continuous improvement of social, economic, and environmental responsibility throughout the global seafood supply chain. Our vision is a global sustainable seafood industry in which our stewardship of the planet and people benefits all. Our membership consists of 11 mid-supply chain companies spread out across the US, and we do have one lone representative from Canada that is involved in CPACT. And I think as you look at this map and you look at these brands and these companies, it's really important to understand where they sit in the supply chain. So a lot of these companies represent the last mile of the supply chain that are selling into restaurants, that are selling to food service, that are selling to retailers. And collectively, they own 0 fishing boats. So they do not own, they're not vertically integrated where they actually own fishing vessels, but they're often buying through importers, buying through traders, buying through brokers. And so they're a bit removed from the actual source fisheries that they're sourcing from. And I think that's important context when you start to think about how they engage in sustainability efforts. Our membership requirements currently, CPAC members must adopt and implement individual public sustainability sourcing commitments. They support a model of continuous improvement and actively participate in sustainability efforts. And then they financially support CPAC through our membership dues. Historically, our engagement has really been focused on a single program, and that's our project funding program. That's probably what CPAC is best known for. And this was really developed by the founding CPAC members who said, okay, given that we source a really diverse suite of products, a lot of different types of species, everything from tuna to oysters to squid, we were facing a lot of different types of sustainability challenges, and they felt like funding different projects to address these challenges was how to go about things. So over the course of about 10 years, we've provided more than 40 different grants to different projects that are working on sustainability priorities that the CPAC members have identified. So these range from everything from supporting electronic monitoring efforts in fisheries to bringing together conflicting stakeholders around responsible aquaculture, to even looking at things like addressing gender equality. So that right there shows you that, there's a lot of different types of sustainability challenges that these companies face, and how they're going about it is they're looking at, addressing them through project funding. More recently, our organization has begun to evolve. Over the past year and a half or so, we've been working with an independent consultant to undertake some strategic planning efforts. And we've really shifted our work away from individual grant giving to more direct supply chain engagement for the members. Now, CPAC members are setting specific time-bound sustainability goals and objectives for the priority strategic areas. And the way that this worked was the consultant went out and interviewed the individual CPAC members and said, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing on sustainability? Not what, your NGO partner is telling you, not what, you think is the biggest issue, what you're hearing from your peers, but as an individual operation, what is the biggest challenge you're facing? And very quickly, the CPAC members came together and identified 3 different strategic priority areas to focus their work on. The one I'll focus on today is on the wild side of things. It's looking at addressing environmental sustainability issues in key priorities. Across all of the CPAC members, fresh frozen tuna came up as the most important product that they're wrestling with sustainability issues on, followed by mahi, snapper, grouper. And then in terms of the overall strategic priorities, the other 2 that we're focused on are responsible aquaculture, specifically domestically in the US and Canada, and then looking at social responsibility and working through supply chains to address human rights. But again, what I'll be talking about today is really focused on that wild environmental side priority. And so with that prioritization effort underway, really started to look at how we go about addressing some of these challenges. And we've seen this shift away from individual grant giving to a more collective engagement of the CPAC members' supply chains on sustainability efforts. And it's as we started to look at the responses that we got from the members on why they would pick these challenges or why they'd be willing to do this. Really, the key answers that came up were, 1, it was availability of sustainable product. That was a big challenge, being able to get access to sustainable product. Sustainability is an incredibly complex topic when it comes to seafood, as you all know. But I think at the very basic rudimentary level of sustainability, you have to look at how the resource is managed in order to ensure long-term sustainability. So that comes back to the fishery management plan. That comes back to the harvest control rules. Is it using fundamental science to inform management decisions? And that was really what we felt like was an area that we should be more focused on. And then it's also meeting the market demand for a sustainable product. That was kind of the second theme that emerged from all the companies that we work with when they provided feedback on these challenges. So we said, all right, well, what are the areas that you want to focus on? And they said, well, we know that the market's going to continue to demand sustainable products. We want to be able to meet that market demand, and we need to be able to do that by supporting responsible fisheries management. We know we're not going to go out and discover new fisheries. So we need to make sure that the fisheries that we are buying from are well managed, well regulated. Our inaugural strategic plan will be launched at the end of this year, but I can give you a preview of where it's headed. So this is one example that's embedded in our strategic plan. So as I mentioned, fresh frozen tuna is an incredibly important commodity for the CPAC members themselves. And so the members recently adopted these objectives and goals as it relates to fresh frozen tuna. So the objective being that the members will collaborate to drive continuous improvement and address environmental sustainability in the fisheries that they're sourcing from when it comes to tuna. And then through CPAC, our goal is to ensure that all members understand and achieve supply chain traceability and are able to identify and publish annual key data elements for key sources. So looking at the species, the country, the vessel, the flag, vessel flag, RFMO. And why is this important? Again, it comes back to being able to identify the source fisheries that the companies are buying from and looking at where the sustainability risk is. So in the absence of a fishery management plan, it poses a big risk. You heard Eric talk about it at the top. A fishery management plan, a well-regulated, well-managed fishery can provide stability in supply, can stabilize production through, on an annual basis by being well-regulated and well-managed. And then the other goal, engage stakeholders to ensure availability of sustainable and traceable products. Again, I think, our focus is working more down the supply chains, but it's not just the supply chains, it's also engaging fishery regulators and managers as well, too, to ensure there's support for responsible products. And then transparency, publicly reporting out on individual sustainability efforts, I think is critical. And so you can see this is kind of the future of where CPAC is going and how it ties into responsible fisheries management. To a certain degree, we've been doing some of these things for the last couple of years or so. And so there's just some individual examples of that. So we put out an op-ed in support for more electronic monitoring last year. I worked with the chair of our board to do so, Alex Golub from Acme Smoked Fish. We've worked with Eric and Pew on helping advocate for better management of North Atlantic swordfish. There was some positive news that came out on that. And then also 2 years ago, we had 2 CPAC members actually attend an IATTC RFMO meeting and voice their support for better electronic monitoring in those fisheries there. And that was a great experience, and really the first time that we had members exposed directly to RFMOs, the RFMO process, and actually get to observe the RFMO process and see how the inner workings of fishery management at that level happens. And our hope is that we see more of that kind of engagement going forward. And then the final example that I'll highlight is this first mile traceability, an EM project that we're working with the Nature Conservancy on. And really that was bringing kind of the market feedback to this project and saying, okay, you've got this great work that's happening on these boats in Costa Rica that are using EM technology to capture information on, everything from ETP species interaction, but also there was a really good quality component where they're using temperature sensors to make sure that the quality handling at the vessel level was really good and all the way up through the supply chain. And so the CPAC members themselves were really able to provide feedback on what the market needed to ensure that this really innovative project that was taking place was delivering product that was going to meet the market demand. And so we've been working closely with them on that project. And so again, I think, just to wrap things up and summarize, I think you have to look at, the types of companies that are involved. A lot of times you hear people say, well, industry should be doing this and industry should be doing that. But I think, it depends on where they sit in the supply chain, what leverage they have to advocate for more responsible management. So through CPAC, where we're, these companies are not vessel owners, they often don't have a direct connection to the fisheries themselves. They work collectively through this group to advocate for more responsible management of fisheries. And so I think that's where we're headed and where we're going in terms of CPAC. And so with that, I'll just say a big thank you to Pew for having us here and allowing us to share our kind of where we're going in terms of supporting responsible fisheries management. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. It's encouraging to see the efforts that CPAC's partner companies are making just to improve tuna and general fisheries management overall. So thank you so much. And then next up, we have Dr. Vetjans Dimlik, the advocacy lead for the Global Tuna Alliance. Dr. Dimlik is a seasoned fisheries professional with a career focus on sustainable fisheries and stakeholder engagement. He will be speaking on GTA's work in protecting tuna fisheries through management procedures. So now I'd like to turn things over to Dr. Dimlik. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Eric. Are we up on the screen okay?
Perfect.
Awesome. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to try to get through this okay. It is about 3:30 a.m. here, so hopefully I don't fall off my chair before I get to the end of this talk. As Eric mentioned, I'm Vetjans Dimlik, Advocacy Lead for the Global Tuna Alliance. Today I'm just going to briefly walk you through how GTA is working to reduce the risks for our partners in their sustainable tuna sourcing commitments basically through the promotion and implementation of robust management procedures. So as we've all heard, there's a strong and growing demand for sustainably sourced tuna. Retailers and brands, many of whom are GTA partners, have made clear public commitments to only source from sustainably managed tuna fisheries. But delivering on these promises isn't simple, as we've been hearing. Depends very heavily on the pace of progress made within the tuna RFMOs, and these bodies have the mandate to manage tuna stocks in our oceans. If RFMOs fail to implement the proper management, then these retail commitments are at risk and creating exposure for not only our partners but throughout the industry. That's both reputational and also operational. Slow pace of management change by RFMOs really does come as a reality check for retailers and also, I guess, certification bodies such as the MSC. And they sort of came from a history of certifying fisheries in the early days that sort of fell within a narrow geographic scope and managed by maybe a single fishery agency rather than trying to, I guess, hope for 30 plus countries to agree on something as complicated as a management procedure. So we've all been scrambling to recover really ever since we started trying to certify tuna fisheries for sustainability. Just talking about a little bit about the risks that the industry is facing. So when the retailers commit publicly to sourcing and sustainably managed tunas, they're not just making a marketing statement, they're making a promise to consumers, investors, NGOs, and regulators. And obviously that promise does carry with it some real measurable risk. We'll have a look at some of just the main three areas of risk. Obviously there's a reputational issue. So if a retailer is claiming its tuna sustainable, but somehow it's later revealed that the stock is overfished or that no harvest strategy or management procedures in place, they can face accusations of greenwashing. And obviously this is hypothetical. Retailers have been publicly called out by NGOs and consumer groups for exactly this issue. For many major retailers, seafood's used as a flagship for broader sustainability messaging, and tuna can be the high-profile front fish for their messaging. The failure in tuna sourcing credibility can really undermine consumer trust across the brand and not just in the seafood aisles. Supply chains can be disrupted. Many companies rely on certification, like the MSC that we've heard quite a bit about today, to prove that their products are sustainably sourced. But the certification, it does depend on that RFMO level management. And without harvest strategies, fisheries, they can be, and in some cases have been suspended from MSC certification, and that leaves retailers scrambling come up with a plan B. So the risk isn't just reputational, it's also commercial. There's lost sales, contract renegotiations, and also emergency resourcing of tuna or other seafood. And also on market access, there are some risks here. So retailers are facing growing scrutiny from regulators and industry watchdogs. Mislabeled or questionably sourced tuna can trigger investigations or delistings from procurement platforms, or even breaches of advertising standards. Beyond that, we're seeing procurement standards tightening from institutional buyers, food service companies, public tenders. If a retailer's tuna sourcing doesn't meet sustainability thresholds, which includes the existence of management procedures, it can really risk losing access to key contracts or customer segments. So this is why at GTA we're framing management procedures not just as a conservation goal, but it's more of a risk mitigation strategy for retailers. And without these in place, the promises that are made to consumers, certifiers, and regulators are sort of based on fairly shaky ground. So why management procedures? So we've heard a little bit about this this morning, but obviously they're pivotal to retailer sustainable tuna sourcing commitments. Obviously internationally recognized standards for sustainability. They protect the credibility of the claims for sustainability, and also continuity of eco-labels and sustainable sourcing policies. But for GTA partners in particular, these are more than just technical tools. These harvest strategies and management procedures, whatever you like to call them, directly connect global fisheries governance to retailer credibility and also commercial stability. So our partners understand that committing to sustainable tuna sourcing without these in place is really taking a very, very high level of risk. So by pushing forward and supporting these adoption of MPs at the RFMOs, retailers working through the GTA can work towards fulfilling their commitments and also avoiding that reputational and commercial risk. So we've heard a little bit about some of the case studies. So there's obviously the issue, the WCPFC skipjack. So back in 2021, there were over 2 million tonnes of tuna faced of their MSC certification just because of delays in developing a management procedure. Obviously, a lot of the delay was just in explaining to many of the members of the commission exactly what a management procedure was. So there was a lot of capacity building necessary before we could sort of move forward on that. There was a lot of market pressure growing over the period of time. GTA and many other companies were sort of putting a bit of pressure on the RFMO and demanding adoption of a harvest strategy. And finally, in 2022, as we heard previously, they managed to adopt that skipjack policy. It's mainly through the FFA countries and spearheaded by the PNA that really brought that process to a conclusion. Over in the other ocean, in Indian Ocean with the yellowfin, we've all heard how overfished this has been for years, and IOTC has repeatedly failed to adopt a management procedure on those fish. Advocacy has been escalating by the industry with various industries, so retail pressure. Some of the GTA partners, Carrefour and others, did suspend their sourcing from Indian Ocean in 2024 to uphold their commitments to sustainable sourcing. I'll take a little halfway stop just to explain who GTA are. So collectively, our partners are those supply chain companies. We have more than about 50 companies, I think, including some of the world's largest retailers and tuna brands. Our partners are directly affected by RFMO decisions. These companies are on the front line of consumer demand, and we provide them with a collective voice in international fisheries governance. This really is a very unique development for RFMOs, where the seafood industry has traditionally been represented by companies that are more directly involved in fishing operations rather than retail. So for a long time, the start of the supply chain rather than the end of the supply chain. So our companies are those that are more publicly exposed to the risks that we've discussed before. So by lobbying for management procedures before any crisis hits, which is actually a sensible approach for any fishery, not just tuna, GTA helps partners avoid emergency sourcing decisions and also broken public promises. We do have challenges in the way we operate. For many of our partners, tuna is just one of several sustainability priorities and has to compete with all sorts of things like palm oil, poultry, soy, and others. Sustainability leads, the managers that are concerned with these issues. They're often managing dozens of supply chains, not just tuna. So they're very time poor. And as we've heard, the complexity of RFMO processes, very technical, very opaque, and extremely political. It can be really difficult for them to understand how to engage with this process. And we face, there's a real risk of disengagement if the business relevance isn't really made very clear. So that's where we come in as GTA. We translate the technical RFMO outcomes into tangible business risk. We provide our partners with clear briefings, templates, and messaging that they can use in their advocacy efforts. And we focus their attention on high impact RFMO moments. So look ahead to upcoming meetings, see what's likely to be at the top of the agendas for those meetings, and try and explain to our members and assist them in making sure that their voice can be heard at those meetings to make the greatest difference. So the current priority, I think we've heard a little bit about albacore before. Obviously, South Pacific albacore is a little bit behind in the timeline for adoptions of a management procedure. WCPFC is in the process of developing a management procedure for this stock, again, led very much by the FFA members, the Pacific Island countries, particularly the southern longline fishing companies, countries that are very dependent on these fisheries. Why does it matter? Catch rates in this fishery have been falling for a long time. It's been a classic boom bust fishery, but each boom has been in general terms slightly lower than the previous boom, and each bust has been lower than the previous bust. So profitability in this fishery is under some severe pressure, and the risk of losing MSC certification is perceived as very real. So there's a very strong industry interest in achieving a management procedure this year. It goes beyond questions of sustainability, with objectives to stabilise the economics of the fishery and to maintain that market access. And we're actively engaged with partners and governments in the Pacific to support this process. But not so fast. We do have some other challenges ahead. So adopting these management procedures is one thing. The other half of the equation is actually implementing, and this is where we're sort of falling short in many areas. So there is good news. We do have momentum with the MPs. The RFMOs all have work plans and timeframes to adopt MPs for their respective tuna fisheries. The development is now more tied to available resources with the scientific staff and others. But really, it's about implementing these management procedures, and then we run into a very thorny issue of allocation mechanisms. These are complex and very contentious undertakings that sit outside the MP itself, and this is an outcome that's sort of come about because trying to wrap it all up into a single conservation and management measure that includes allocation would just stretch timeframes out to well, just unsustainable levels, to be honest. So in often cases, we've moved ahead with the management procedure, but the implementation part of that has been left to a later date. And now a lot of the RFMOs are now turning around to struggle with some of these issues sort of raised their heads at IOTC earlier this year, and this will continue until some robust allocation mechanisms are arrived at. So obviously there's political complexity, lack of consensus on these. There's diverse management systems which need to be reconciled, equitable baselines, there's historical catch attribution, addressing special requirements and equity for developing states. And just on top of all of that, we have mixed fishery interactions. As we've heard, the big eye fishery is also in the Pacific, is also a little bit behind, but that's overlapping with the albacore, and we're paying particular attention to how these mixed fisheries interactions can be dealt with through MPs that sit next to each other. But just when you thought we're halfway there, it's time to bring this guy back out again for a few more rounds. So allocation, the next big battle. Of course, it's not all about fisheries management. GTA are looking at other areas. Our partners have commitments for responsible sourcing as well. So we're also looking at areas that of labour rights issues, and obviously also with traceable supply chains to eliminate IUU fishing, illegal fish from the supply chain. So The work goes far beyond just MPs. It stretches across many of these other areas as well. That's the end of the slide. So just concluding and wrapping up. So retailers and brands have very rightly made very ambitious sustainability commitments. Those commitments will only hold if the fisheries that they rely on are managed properly. MPs are the backbones of responsible tuna governments, and these provide that predictability, legitimacy, and security for stocks and the supply chains. And GTA exists really to make sure that that happens by aligning the market expectations with RFMO outcomes. We help, we aim to de-risk that tuna sourcing and also safeguard the credibility of the commitments made by our GTA partners and other players in the industry. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me, and thanks Eric and Pu for inviting us to speak to this group. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dimler, for your insights. And it's great to see GTA's leadership in the space and in the work that y'all's partners are doing to support tuna fisheries management. Now moving on to our final speaker. For our final speaker, we are pleased to welcome Michael Cohen, the Market Outreach Associate for the International Seafood Sustainability Foundation, or ISSF. Michael joined ISSF after a career as a management consultant in the field of sustainable business development. And then prior to that experience, he was the general manager for the international business development at the H.J. Heinz Company. He'll be sharing ISSF's work supporting harvest strategy adoption. So to finish us out, please welcome Michael.
Thanks, Eric, for the introduction. And I guess one of the pleasures of being last in line is we're going to have a little harvest strategy speed dating session here. I think there's about 5 minutes to go before we wrap up. So I'll kind of hit the high points and not touch on some of the things that we've heard already today. Just two words here about ISSF. Our goal is to continuously improve the sustainability of global tuna fisheries and the ecosystems that support them, so that those fisheries can meet and importantly maintain the MSC certification standard. We heard earlier from Marin about several tuna fisheries that have the MSC standard but are at risk at losing them because of the harvest strategy or failure to progress on harvest strategies at this point. And I would say of the fisheries that do have MSC, that two conditions that those fisheries have more often than any other are harvest strategies and harvest control rules. So this is very important for our strategic plan, not only for the management of tuna fisheries, but for our strategic objectives here. The objective that we have would be achieved by two key efforts. One, the development and implementation of verifiable best practices by our participating companies. Our organizational, for those of you who aren't familiar with ISSF, our organizational ecosystem includes leading NGOs that are active in the tuna space, scientists leading marine scientists, and participating companies, which are principally processors and importers. There are 24 participating companies who, through their participation, contribute to the efforts of ISSF. So in addition to working through supply chains, we also work to advocate to RFMOs. And it's as we've heard today, very, very complex, and sustainable management requires continuous improvement. Since ISSF founding, harvest strategies and working to adopt harvest strategies has been one of our priorities. We heard today about the importance of harvest strategies. We also heard a fair amount about why they're so darn difficult, and the timing can be glacial. So I'm going to really focus on what it is that ISSF is doing to harness science, influence, and collaboration to move that process forward. We're very pleased to see good progress, and this slide indicates some of the progress that's been made and some of the outlook for near-term achievements that we're seeing for. But I want to talk about our multidimensional strategy, how science is informing action. And there's really three. I've got a bunch of slides after this, but looking at the time, what I want to do is just talk to you about this slide and kind of just touch base on some of the actions in each of the buckets here, each of the priorities. So science process participation. ISSF is very actively engaged and leads engagement in each RFMO. So we participate in the scientific committee working groups. We're sharing our expertise on management procedures and management strategy evaluation. In those groups, for example, the working party of methods was chaired by our senior scientist, Hilario Marua. He remains the chair there at the IOTC for several years. And we're also contributing in some cases to the funding for some of that and the research that takes place for some of that management strategy evaluation, and participation in the science manager dialogues, which are really a critical part of advancing management procedures in RFMOs for tuna species. The second initiative that we engage is in capacity building. So we collaborated with other organizations as part of the ABNJ JEF program to conduct technical workshops. There were eight different countries. And really the objective for those was to inform and empower countries, RFMO members, to engage actively and knowledgeably in the commission process. As we've heard, I think Dr. Dimlich spoke pretty compellingly about how arcane this can be sometimes and how technical it is, and these workshops were really designed to empower and inform folks so that they could engage in this process and understand what is an MP, what is an MSE, what is the role of science and the manager, and the important role of the dialogue between science and managers in terms of what objectives they're setting, what are the risks and the timeframes. And finally, taking that science and taking that engagement to both market influence and advocacy. So ISSF comments on every single MSC certification or audit, providing stakeholder comments about, and each one of those will encourage adoption of harvest strategies. There, between the years 2022 and 2024, there have been 235 such stakeholder submissions. Our participating companies, of which Tri-Marine and Bolton are our founding partners, there have been 5,000 letters they've sent to across all RFMOs. In addition, directly meeting with RFMO delegates, participating on advisory councils for RFMO member, advocating through their vessels and through the MSC fisheries that they are part of, and also through FIPS that they're engaged with to advocate to RFMOs and engage with RFMOs to advance harvest strategies. ISSF prepares a number of tools that, we don't just say, go out there and do it. We provide guidance and tools to support that process, whether those are position statements or talking points or model letters. In some cases, we'll collaborate also with other RFMOs, NGOs, to advocate both as NGOs and also with our partners or members to advance awareness and advance market influence of those important harvest strategies. And I guess I would say that market influence is a very important complement to the activity going on with the RFMO members and delegates, as well as with scientists. And I would encourage those retailers who may be on the call to engage with your supply chain partners, with the vessels that you source with, to make their voice heard as well. Those of you with NGO partners, I'm sure will find, whether it's GTA or SFP or WWF or ISSF, if we call on you directly, can provide enabling tools to support you making your voice heard. So I'm going to leave it there. I don't know if there's time for questions, but thanks for your attention. Appreciate being invited to join this conversation and collaborate with these respected folks on the call with me today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. It's encouraging to see ISSF's leadership in this space. And thanks for that call to action at the end. So that concludes our speaker presentations for today. We do have some time for questions. So we have about 15-20 minutes to set aside for questions and discussion. So all panelists, you are welcome to turn your cameras back on if you'd like. If you'd like to ask a question live, please use the raise hand function and we'll call on you in order. And then alternatively, you can submit your written questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom window. So we have our first question in. J. Ramon Garcia, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you very much to all the speakers and for the educative session for people like me that I work less with NGOs or, well, most of them you are not NGO, but you are of course companies or association of general interest to defend sustainable fisheries. That for me is also important. Yeah? My question is the following. First of all, well, I represent Oman in different fisheries organizations in the Gulf and also before IOTC, and I am assisting them to improve their levels of compliance and to try to have a better understanding on the way to join this international system of certifications. Okay, most of them, for not to say all, are private, but okay, of general interest, this I agree. And my question, I don't know to whom I need to raise. Maybe any of you can answer. If Oman would like to engage, because it has already 6 pursigners, state-of-the-art pursigners, 2 of them are new. So it has started since 2022 in industrial tuna fisheries in the Indian Ocean. What would be the best? At which level has to engage? At the level of Oman as a state, second, at the level of the ship owners or tuna organization of pursigners, or at the level of the 2 companies or 3 companies that are members of this association. I understand that in Europe or for IOTC, MCS has a reputation of certification. I have seen what you do with other ship owners associations with the EU, based in the EU. I have seen the role played by GTA to improve the level of compliance of the companies to procure tuna. I learned now what you do in the US with the other associations. So, but at this level of the session that is harvesting procedures, you know that some RFMO are still engaging in the development of management procedures that will be supported fully by Oman, in particular on yellowfin. That is, it seems not to be anymore in danger, but it is in green, and it will be reconfirmed this by the scientific committee soon again. So to summarize, what would be the best level to engage more the members of the tuna pursigners of Oman in these organizations? That would be my question. I don't know who will need to ask. Maybe it is a very open question. I'm sorry for that, but I would really like to learn more on this.
Great, thanks so much. So just to reiterate, your question is, what is the best way to engage with tuna fishery advocacy, with specifically, you bring up the IOTC, but with RFMOs in general, so at a fishery level, at a company level, or at a state level. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Great.
It is.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, of our speakers, does anyone like to take that on first?
I can try.
Krista, go for it.
Just to start the ball rolling. Oh, Krista.
I'm happy to defer if you'd like, but
yeah, well, it's just my initial thoughts, and then you can probably develop those quite a bit more. I think it seems to be this is I guess a small fleet or vessel level question. So possibly the first steps would be to look at getting involved in a fishery improvement project, a FIP, and through the development of that FIP, whoever you have helping you with that would develop an action plan, which would also go some way to identifying the steps you might be able to take at the RFMO level. So there's a few steps in this sort of progress, and that may be an initial one. Maybe the Maren might be able to help with that one as from the MSC perspective as well. But anyway, those are my initial thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, the FIP, we have received some advice from some largest tuna companies, member of any of the main associations you are in this forum now, in this session. Yes, but the FIP has to be made at the company's level or at the ship owner's level or with the support of the state level, because most of these tuna porciners has been exported from Europe. So in the end, they were under the FIP before, and I think that there is a mechanism to do that. So do we need to engage with MSC or do we need to engage with whom in the end on this?
I think I'll jump in on this. There are a variety of different ways that you have approached engaging with MSC and organizing yourselves. Typically, if a fishery is interested in becoming certified or entering our MSC improvement program, the processors of the product organize themselves into a collective of some sort and then move the fishery into our program that way. That's not the only way to do it, but that is just an example. What I can do is if you send me an email, then we can chat about different ways. I can put you in touch with our staff that's in your region and they can help you specifically.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate. So please continue with the debate because I didn't want to be the first on this. Sorry.
I'm going to just jump in very quickly before we pivot off this conversation topic. I think it's important that you engage all three. When you're talking about engagement at the RFMO level, Oman is a member state, is the one that really can raise the issue on the floor. That being said, you really want the engagement of the boat owners. Many times they have the ability to work with retailers, to work with NGOs, to do some of the lift across around the floor, I guess I would say, even at the meetings in terms of the margins, to make that happen. And then I think on the vessel component, it's equally important for two reasons. Firstly, they're the ones that in terms of actually implementing something on the water, they're going to give you incredible ideas on how to do that. And the second thing is it provides ownership for those decisions that are happening at the RFMO level or other levels for government, so that it's more ownership and ideas are more likely to be implemented more easily and more effectively. So I would encourage all three. Then again, that's the approach we've taken, which you heard a bit about in our slide deck. So hopefully that's helpful for you as you pursue this, and very encouraging to hear that this is the direction that you're moving.
Thank you, Krista.
If I can just emphasize one point there that Krista made. Oman has been very active in the IOTC for the last several years, and with regarding yellowfin rebuilding, and in fact, I think Oman may be the largest country that captures the largest amount of yellowfin in the Indian Ocean. So I really think that you should capitalize on Oman's presence at the IOTC, and it's almost easier to start from the top than kind of from the FIP and try and work your way up to create influence and pressure on the RFMO delegates and the National Fisheries Agency to make change at the RFMO. So if you've got access to an interest from the government, I would certainly capitalize on that. And then if you want to talk about FIPS or how to encourage the vessels or have to be transparent and audited, let's say, or being able to demonstrate their implementation of best practices. ISSF has tools through the Proactive Vessel Register or vessels and other sustainability initiatives that can be sustainable management tools as part of a FIP or as part of an MSC improvement project or an MSC certification initiative. So those are quite transparency and accountability tools that can assist in your efforts of working with the vessels who are committed to improvement and meeting these objectives. But certainly don't leave the government to last, because they're influential there in the IOTC.
No. I explained that I am expert of the government of Oman, so I am in the middle of everything. Yes, we this year we reached the level of compliance close to 80% for the first time, finally. But we are committed to improve. Work is in progress. The high level you mentioned relates mainly to artisanal catches, artisanal fishing. We have engaged external data advisors to revisit the data process. Most of the conclusions for the moment are that the system operates well. It has a US software tool prepared at the time by FAO and IOTC experts. But indeed, yes, the Oman's intention is to keep under control this situation, and to find a way to create a mix of fishing fleets between artisanal coastal and the small industrial fishing fleet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramon. I appreciate that. And artisanal fleets we mustn't only focus on big. They may need support and capacity building as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to NGOs to support that as well.
Great. Thank you so much for that insightful question. We have one more question that came in to move on from Pablo Alvarez. Their question is, when it comes to developing management procedures or harvest strategies, it seems the challenge is more a matter of advocacy and political issue than a technical or management one. So just based on your experiences, if you could speak more on this, that would be appreciated. Yeah, the floor is open to anyone who'd like to go first.
Okay, since nobody's jumping in, I don't know that I would say that that's necessarily been our experience in terms of advocacy over technical. I think the technical experience in many cases is there. It just may be that the workload has been prioritized differently. And that's really, from my perspective, where the advocacy piece comes in, right? When we talk about fishing as fishing, it's not catching. But we also, because we are talking about a wild capture protein when it comes to tuna, we also have rapid changes in the environment. And so when we set a workload, even say in 2024, things can occur in 2025 that we did not anticipate. I guess the classic example would be in 2019, we did not expect COVID, which really impacted and uprooted all of our fisheries and our fishermen, et cetera. And so I don't want to give the impression that, hey, if we all just advocate for things, it's going to happen. Sometimes we need to make sure that we provide the resources and we provide the bandwidth for our technical advisors. And some of that may actually be helping support in terms of the financial resources through programs. And we've seen a number of projects. Michael, you didn't highlight too many of these today on the call since you were being very mindful of time. But ISSF and I think GTA and a number of others have done programs to really help support that research and science. So again, it's not that the technology or the research capability isn't there. It's making sure that we've got all the parts and pieces to get what we need across the table at the RFMO.
Yeah, I can maybe pitch in a little bit just from my own experience. Obviously working for quite a long time in the Pacific, in one of my previous roles as the Director of Fisheries Management at FFA. In the beginning, it was the problems were very technical because it was new to everyone. There's a new language, and the scientists and managers didn't speak the same language. So there were quite a long period of capacity building. We traveled around the Pacific trying to tell people what MPs were and why they should be adopted, and just I guess getting people familiar with the language and the terminology that was very, very new. So that was really one of the main challenges. And now it's moving away from really that technical hurdles, which have also been overcome by forming such groups where the scientists and managers can exchange some dialogue and sort of have a back and forth and better understand more about management procedures. But as I mentioned before, it's moving now away from those technical. It's only limited really by the resources of say the bodies like SPC in the Pacific to actually work through the harvest strategy work plans that the commission's agreed to. So that's sort of the constraints there. So it's not really technical. It's more a resource issue. But now we're moving really into some heavy duty political issues where we actually start to talk about allocating the tax that these MPs are recommending, and that's where we're really hitting into some real brick walls, just in dividing out that catch, and that's sort of as I noted in passing in my presentation, that's where the next real challenge lies, and it's probably even a tougher challenge than developing the MPs themselves.
Yeah, if I can pick up on that, I think when we first started back in 2014, writing letters to RFMO delegates about trying to give voice to the market, that was a new thing, and I think the fact that every NGO had their own letter and every retailer was getting 3 or 4 letters, and was probably one of the catalysts for GTA, if I recall correctly, to be formed back then. And I do think now there is some awareness that the market and the supply chain find these important, and as you were saying, I think we're now getting to a more refined, sophisticated level of what is engagement. So if you're a supply chain company or a retailer that wants to get involved, I think it's a good place to start by asking, where are the roadblocks for this specific harvest strategy? And it may be funding a researcher to assist the SPC to take the time to run the data, or to have a workshop, or it may not just be writing a letter and putting your logo on it. I think there may be different constraints in different oceans and then with different species, and it's important to ask so that your influence can be targeted most effectively.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. We have one more question before finishing up. It's a little bit of a two-parter, so feel free to kind of pick whichever one that you'd like to speak on most. The first part is, what do you see as and Michael, you talked a bit about it, as the biggest hurdle standing in the way of broader harvest strategy adoption, and what role can the seafood sector play in overcoming it? And then kind of going off of that, just looking ahead, what gives you hope or confidence that industry-led advocacy can continue to make an impact? So why don't, because it's our final question, maybe we'll start with you, Maren, and just kind of go down the line of speakers.
Okay, so I'm going to focus on the second part, the hope part. And what gives me hope, honestly, is webinars like this, where we're all coming together to discuss all the different ways that we're working on harvest strategies, because I think that continues to move the needle slowly forward. And I'd like to see all that progress and collaboration.
Great. Krista, you want to go next?
Sure. I think in terms of challenge, it's that there isn't one solution, right? What is going to work at WCPFC can be a learning experience for others, but it may not be 100% relevant. not just because of fisheries, but also just because of culture. And so it's important to be able to learn from wins in regions. It's important to apply that. But it's also important to find solutions based upon what the on-the-ground practicalities are at the RFMO level. I think in terms of the opportunity, one of the things that's been really encouraging is that we have started seeing more people collaborating more effectively together. And some of that is through our NGO partnerships and relationships that we've built. Some of it is having more engagement with retailers involved in the space. So it's a wider, broader push. And I think all in all, just that opportunity for people to really refine and customize what it is, rather than, hey, we're going to do a letter campaign and think that that is going to work. That's an important component, but really tailoring what we're doing is an incredible opportunity for growth for all of us.
Great, thank you so much. Sam?
Yeah, I think for challenges, I think you need broader industry engagement for advocacy. I show up to these webinars and I see the same people, and I think they're the ones that are leading the way. But they're only a fraction of the total global seafood industry that are engaged in these efforts. And you need to get a broader industry consensus to advocate for this stuff. That it can't just fall on the GTA members, it can't just fall on Trimarine, it can't fall on the CPAC members. You need to get other industry engaged in these efforts if you are really going to have industry lead the charge on advocating for more responsible fisheries management. What gives me hope is that I think the work that's been done by these leading companies has resulted in some good wins and has resulted in some good outcomes out of fishery management for responsible fisheries management. So that part gives me hope. And so I think the opportunities are to try to attract more industry into these efforts, make sure that the advocacy and the solution pieces fit within their operations and they understand the value and why they would participate in these efforts. So that's where I see the opportunities.
Absolutely, thank you so much. Vetyens?
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I did speak about some of the challenges, and I guess because we're dealing with these companies that are so huge and they have so many supply chains, and tuna is just one of them. Just really the challenge is making sure that they can understand how to engage effectively at the RFMO level, and I guess but they are slowly, it's like a sleeping giant starting to waken up, and they're starting to realize that the market has some really, theoretically should have some really huge power and influence at these organizations. And I guess that's where the opportunity and the hope is, that they can understand how to pull the levers that are available to them to get the outcomes that they need so they can meet these commitments they've made to consumers all around the world with regarding sustainability, and also, more importantly, going beyond that to responsible sourcing, to looking after the welfare of crews on these working vessels, and also eliminating the illegal practices which go on in the oceans, which are often also related to abuses of human rights at sea as well. So there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a very broad area, and from our point of view, our partners are growing increasingly engaged. We're running working groups for those partners who want to get more engaged with RFMOs and understand how they work, and we're getting an increasing attendance to those breedings and meetings as well. So I think while there's been many challenges in the past and it has taken a long time, I think Michael mentioned we'd started back when I was at WWF in the 2014s in the Indian Ocean, trying to get that skipjack HCR, that first one, adopted back in 2016, and now we've really got some momentum going. It's essentially just a matter of the RFMOs working through their hit lists of tuna fisheries now. But still, it's a really tough struggle. But I think there's a lot of hope that, and I guess it's not just hope, we can see it happening on the ground or on the water maybe, that all these very large organizations and companies are really getting behind the push to ensure that their commitments are met and reduce that risk that they're taking by making those commitments. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then to close this out, Michael.
Well, everybody said such great things. I guess I would just echo the importance of identifying how we use the influence now that there's kind of been an awakening and to the link between let's say sustainability policy commitments for responsible or sustainable sourcing and harvest strategies in the markets and in supply chains. I think now it's how we collaboratively direct that influence so that it can make a difference, whether it's through the supply chain or with market partners. Writing a collaborative letter may be the answer in some situations. It may not be. And each one of the companies that's engaged with us or engaged with GTA or isn't engaged at all has their own strategic business priorities. And I think it's important to marry up actions that need to happen with those business priorities, because they'll stick more within those organizations and they'll be more sustainably kind of integrated into their business practices. And I think we as NGOs also need to kind of continue the shift from looking for commitments and looking for concrete progress, and that includes, like, ISSF provides every year an annual report on the activities of our participating companies and the types of activities they've done with an initiative isn't the same as impact, but if we're not kind of keeping transparent track of the initiatives that are happening, we certainly won't have impact. And we're pleased to see the growing participation and progress being made where that activity is being executed. So I think we need to encourage our partners and members, whatever the NGO is, to get engaged some way that fits their business protocols and in a way that's going to drive progress forward, to support and strengthen the RFMOs, who have a mandate to effectively manage and sustainably manage these species and these stocks. So it's not new assignment for them, but often they just need support and to just strengthen that effort that they do. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Michael. So that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you so much to all of today's speakers for sharing your valuable insights and perspectives. A big thank you to our project advisory committee, who helped shape the agenda for today and continue to support all the work under this project. We are also grateful to TOF and the FAO Common Oceans team, and to the Global Environment Facility for making this work possible. Special thanks to our interpreters and to all of you who joined from around the world today. The recording of today's session will be available soon on the Ocean Foundation's YouTube channel via harveststrategies.org. Thank you again, and goodbye for now. Appreciate your time.
Thanks everybody for attending.